Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech live on YouTube. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday and ready to dive into once again our hearts to be ripped out and surprised because pretty much the biggest last minute change, or maybe not so last minute change from last year's event, was the fact that everyone, both Quo, both Gurman, and Prosser, were all expecting Apple to drop a squared off Series 7 last year, and it didn't happen. And a lot of people were shocked by it. Very few people actually were coming forward with details, although one of the few that came forward and said actually Series 7 is not going to be squared off, it's going to be very rounded, and that the display would be larger. One of the few people that actually came forward with that info was Shrimp Apple Pro on Twitter. And now, this time, that same leaker is claiming that actually this year, the squared off Apple Watch is happening. And it's kind of hard to wrap my brain around, just because I feel like, fooled me once versus fooled me twice. I don't personally think it makes too much sense for Apple to redesign the Apple Watch. And yes, I do consider the Series 7 a redesign. I think it's funny when people say it's not a redesign, they just made the display bigger. And it's like, okay, if you ignore the differences, then there's no differences, correct? It's like I could say that same thing about the squared off Apple Watch, is that it's not a redesign, it's just the chassis is flatter. So to me, the Series 7 was a redesign. It allowed for more software elements to be implemented, like the QWERTY keyboard. It's very noticeably different coming from someone that used the Series 4 for several years and then the Series 6 for a year. Once I switched to the Series 7, I did very noticeably pick up on the harsher curves on the steel and glass and the thinner bezels. I do consider that a redesign, and even if you just say, well, it's the screen size getting bigger, I'm pretty sure Apple has basically never, especially with Apple Watches, but even with iPhones and iPads, they typically never redesign them or make the display bigger and then the following year change it again, which is essentially what they would have to do in order to make the Series 8 more flat and squared off, is it would have to be a redesign on top of the Series 7 redesign. So year over year, quite a few changes. And I personally think that because the Series 7 was a display increase in size, that from here on out, it's going to be adding new health sensors and improving the silicon upon that same design they introduced last year. So that's just what makes the most sense to me. But Shrimp Apple Pro, who's had a pretty reputable track record so far, is claiming that the Apple Watch, at least the tweet I'm reading and checking in on, is saying that, here's his words. This tweet was from 3 days ago. He said, heard from a source today that there's a flat front glass display for the Apple Watch. So technically, he's not even mentioning much about the chassis, but he says, high chance that this is the front glass for the Series 8. Haven't heard on how the redesigned housing or which model yet. Illustration image only, not real. So I guess I could show you guys what that looks like. Oh, that's editing. Never mind. Sorry. You see Final Cut in the works. This was the renders we talked about last year. That seemed pretty legit. 91 Mobiles has come forward with renders in the past that ended up being accurate. And this was the same render coming forward saying that the 41 and 45 millimeter Apple Watches were going to be a thing. And Shrimp is saying that mass production for this watch has to start relatively soon, which is accurate because we're near the end of the month of May. So I'm not necessarily saying that I think the Series 8 will be flat-edged, but Gurman has been talking about for a while there being this more rugged, durable version of the Apple Watch, and that they would want to diversify the lineup a bit this year. So that rumor, I wonder if it still has validity, the idea that Apple will update the Apple Watch SE, give it some newer silicon, or give it a little bit of a, I don't know, display. Maybe they'll give it the always-on display because it looks noticeably different from the Series 7 curved edge design all the way around. And perhaps the more rugged, like durable Apple Watch could be the one with the flat glass, and they implement the ceramic shield or that kind of thing, or that improves the structural integrity of the Apple Watch, whereas something like the Series 7 might remain, like this design might remain as the more like just luxurious, premium looking, clean looking, because that's the other point I want to get to, is that after wearing the Series 7 for quite some time, and I still admire it, I still look at it and I'm like, wow, this is a clean watch. Like, I love being able to see the pixels from even a 90-degree angle, and it's just so large, and thinnest bezels on any Apple product by far. Nothing comes close. Um, Square doesn't seem right to me. After looking at the Series 7 for this long, I'm not really sold on the squared off Apple Watch, even if it is real. Like, I don't think it. I know it's very subjective and it's a personal preference for a lot of people. Some of you may prefer the squared off design. Some of you may prefer the Series 7 design. But I would rather have this, to be honest with you. I mean, the design symmetry thing with the iPhone, that's kind of fallen apart to me because, for one, my phone is going to be a different thickness from the Apple Watch. It just has to be. And it's got a big camera bump on the back. And my iPad is going to be thinner and aluminum. And my MacBook is curved on the bottom and flat on the top, which allows for, a better thermal architecture and allows for a better use of space with the layout of the battery and the motherboard and all that. But the curved bottom of the MacBook Pro makes it much more comfortable to pick up. It doesn't cut into your hand as much as the old generation MacBook. So this concept that all of Apple's chassis have to kind of match up and they all have to look the same, I'm just kind of abandoning that idea more and more, because I'm like, I think certain form factors in certain products, it makes more sense for them to be square. Like the iPad wants to have the simple, Apple Pencil connectivity on the edge. So it makes sense for it to be flat so that you can do that. It would be very hard to do with a curved back iPad, not to mention most iPads are going to have a case or a smart cover on the back anyway. And with the iPhone, I prefer the flat on the front, but I honestly don't so much prefer the boxy flat edge design on the back, because it cuts into the hand a bit more and it feels less comfortable. So I would love to see a more curved edge back, which is honestly what the original iPhone was. It was a curved edge back with a flat glass front. So maybe for the 20th iPhone anniversary or something, they can go back to that. I don't know. I stopped caring about watch upgrades since the Series 4. To me, it's functionally the same and price doesn't seem worth it. My Series 5 still works great. Well, luckily, Apple knows that your battery health can only last you so long, so they'll keep you upgrading with that after a certain number of years. But yeah, functionality-wise, they definitely run out of stuff quick. James says, I'll upgrade after the new watch is released because mine is aging. Regardless of the rumor, I'm after the bigger size and keyboard option on the watch. I am shocked by how common the keyboard is used. Like, I thought that was pretty crazy when it first came out. I was like, what? They're going to fit a whole QWERTY keyboard on there? That's insane. But I genuinely use it, like, daily. I find myself like, oh, someone texted me, I just want to reply real quick. And I can do that so much faster than the old scribble technique. And I also don't like dictation very much because it's easy for things to get messed up. Not just by how I articulate the text, but also by surrounding audio. I'll dictate something and then some other noise gets made and Siri gets confused and that kind of thing. So I like that QWERTY keyboard. I use it quite a bit. I really hope they go back to silver and space gray. Yeah, maybe they intentionally chose crappy colors on the Series 7 so that they could fix them on the Series 8. Apple retaliates against rumor mills by making Series 8 a literal apple-shaped 3D watch. Yeah, I just think it's funny that a lot of these rumors are picking up traction again, and it's like, do we really want to set ourselves up for disappointment? Because I guess my question is, like, how many of you actually would prefer... I'll put a poll. Which Apple Watch design would you prefer? Because I have a feeling, like, sure, Apple probably prototypes and tests all kinds of chassis and that kind of thing, but I get the feeling they probably tried off a squared-off Apple... They tried on squared-off Apple Watches, and people didn't find them as desirable. That people didn't find them as comfortable or as good-looking as this. Because if it was an option at checkout, they were like, hey, you can buy a squared-off Series 7 and it'll match your iPhone 12 chassis or something like that. There. So Series 7 thin bezel is basically what we have right now. What iPhone will I be ordering this year? Well, I'm not planning on upgrading. I will probably review an iPhone 14 of some kind. I haven't thought about which ones. I guess I'd probably go with a 14 Pro Max just to review the bigger size and see how I feel with the eye hole, and compare that to maybe the 14 Max, since that's a new form factor. That might be worth reviewing. I don't know yet. I just am so comfortable with my 13 Pro Max. I really do not have any desire to upgrade at this point for anything that's currently rumored on the iPhone 14. Currently on Series 5, we'll probably get Series 8, whatever it looks like, but I still really want flat edges. Okay, so Max is under the flat edges. Okay, it's interestingly split, but we still have around 58% of votes saying they would still have the Series 7 thin bezel. Current style, but in silver. So it's a color problem, it's not a chassis problem. Garo says, easily rounded off. I don't want sharp edges built into my wrist. Name one normal watch that has ever been squared. That might be it. I mean, a lot of people like the renders and they like the CAD files of the squared off Apple Watch, but it's possible that maybe when you try it on, it just doesn't sit as flush with the wrist and with, watch bands, and trying to make sure the watch bands are backwards compatible could be a big concern and that kind of thing. Our arms naturally have curves, so a square watch looks weird. I guess that's technically true. Current style, but with a flat display. That also is possible, because Shrimp Apple Pro's source is basically just saying that the front glass is flat. Maybe the front is flat, but the back is still curved, so it has more of like an original iPhone look. Current style, but with ProMotion. Now we're talking. I would take ProMotion for sure. Let's see. I use only an iPhone, and I live very good with that. I don't understand why you would need a watch if you don't track your health. I barely do any health tracking with my watch, and I still find it incredibly useful. Primarily for notification management and texting people a lot quicker. I can reply to a text a lot faster when I just get a tap on my wrist. I check who it is, and then I know whether it's important or not, and I can dismiss it or reply to it real quick, versus my phone getting buzzed. Pulling that whole thing out of the pocket is a lot more like time consuming and intrusive, because you get a buzz on the phone and you don't know who's texting you or who's trying to get a hold of you until you pull the entire thing out, and then you got to unlock it through Face ID or just hold and try to reply right then and there. Whereas this, as long as it's attached to my wrist, it's unlocked, and I can do all my responding, and it unlocks my MacBook every morning, it unlocks my iMac, and so it's a great security feature as well. But yeah, I get why some people don't want them. I'm just saying there's use cases for the Apple Watch outside of checking emails, another good one. To the point now where I just don't even have my phone on me a lot of the time, because I know that if someone needs to get a hold of me, or I need to get a hold of someone, I have the watch right there. So it's a very great communication tool, that's for sure. But I don't really track that much health stuff with it. Wouldn't the bubble under the watch still be there, giving some space between the case and our wrists? I would think so, but it's still like, if you just look at how the Apple Watch sits on your arm, it's still, a lot of the chassis is right there on your wrist. So if you start doing stuff like this, a squared off chassis might be more likely to cut in. Not necessarily that it guarantees a cut in, but from what I've noticed with the Apple Watch renders, the only way to make squared off look relatively good, again, I haven't seen a single squared off Apple Watch render that I thought looked better than this, because having the display just kind of pouring off the sides of the watch is really, really cool. But the coolest looking squared off Apple Watch renders have to make the watch thinner, because if you make the Apple Watch the same thickness of the current Apple Watch Series 7 and stuff, it looks like this. It looks like a brick, it looks too chonk, and it sticks out a lot more on your wrist. So the only way, really, to make the squared off design look good is if you make the watch inherently thinner. Is if you just make the entire thing narrower to the point where the digital crown is basically coming off in front of the glass. But I'm not necessarily sure a thinner Apple Watch is a great idea, because, okay, maybe the chassis is a little flatter now, interesting. But at the same time, that means less space for health sensors, less space for battery life, less space for silicon. So if anything, I feel like they might be boxing themselves in, literally speaking, boxing themselves into a bad design that doesn't allow for as good as battery life, or doesn't allow them to add as many things. So it's possible that, okay, even if with the little raised circle on the back, it doesn't cut into your skin too much. But if having the flat edge design means that you have to shrink the whole thing, you probably won't get as much functionality out of it, in my opinion. It would be great if Apple could use the same solar and movement tech that Citizen watches had for years to prolong battery life. I get the feeling that the reason I know what you're talking about, the Citizen watches that can charge themselves basically through motion and solar. I get the feeling it's because Citizen watches use just an insanely tiny amount of power. Apple watches, I don't think would benefit much at all from that movement tech because the amount of energy they generate is just insanely, insanely small. And you need a lot more power for something with a display, especially a bright one with colors and like a high refresh rate, even 60 hertz. That consumes probably 100 times more power than those Citizen watches do. But yeah, I agree. It'd be cool if you could find a way to charge the thing just by it moving around. My personal prediction is that people are misinterpreting the source. The sources are claiming that, okay, there's a flat glass design for this newer Apple Watch coming this year. I think it's the rugged, durable Apple Watch. They're doing some kind of ceramic shield type thing where they're like, all right, if the glass is flat and it doesn't have the 2.5D edges around it, you can make it a lot more durable and strong and less prone to scratches and shattering. And that chassis might be beefed up, so you may have somewhat of a thick, kind of uglier, probably thicker bezeled, squared off Apple Watch, but it'll be pitched towards, heavy users, heavy usage, sorry, maybe not heavy users, but someone that does rock climbing and stuff, and someone that's going to get their watch beat up and caught on things a lot, and that'll be pitched as the Apple Watch Rugged Edition or Durable Edition or Apple Watch Sport. Maybe they'll bring back the Apple Watch Sport terminology. But the Series 8, as in like the flagship Apple Watch, the main one that comes out this September with the new iPhones, I'm predicting that will look just like this. It'll replace the Series 7, and it will have a new processor that's faster, and it'll have probably a body temperature checking and that kind of thing. So a new health sensor, basically, to remain improved. Hair is on fleek. I don't know why you guys are lying to me in the chat, but thank you. Excuse me, I'm still not feeling great. I thought I was done with my last sickness, and then it came back with a vengeance, which is unfortunate. And there's a lot of busy stuff going on in my personal life right now, so balancing work in the middle of all this is challenging. What if the flat glass isn't the front but the back of the watch to get more surface area of the skin? That would be interesting, although the source does say that it's a flat front glass display for the Apple Watch, so I don't think that's likely. I think there's too many advantages of the circular bulge on the back, because if you made the entire back flat, it wouldn't charge with the same Apple Watch charge pucks. Yeah, just call it Apple Watch Thick Edition. That's good. Let's see. I have a Series 7 with GSM. I do use it for fitness and health tracking, but I use it more as a phone than my iPhone. I use the iPhone basically for searching the web and for Instagram, Twitter. Yeah, in a way, like my iPhone is more for like media consumption. I'll watch videos on my phone, or I'll check Twitter, check Discord, that kind of thing. Things that my watch just can't do. Although it would be kind of nice if I could use Discord on my Apple Watch. The display's getting big enough. I might start to be comfortable with that. Nah, that's probably not a good idea. But as far as just communication goes, there's a lot of times where I'm in the middle of something and then I get a text and I can just check it right there and reply, and I don't feel the desire to grab my phone or anything. So, of course, it's useful for the time, but also just being able to quickly glance and be like, has anyone texted me recently, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I hopefully oxygen in blood. I heard that they've been working on that for years, but it keeps getting pushed back. It keeps getting harder and harder. Have I tried Visible? No, I haven't, but Nick has it and had good experience with it. If Mint Mobile started doing things I didn't like, Visible would probably be my next mobile carrier, but I'm very, very happy with Mint. I don't have any complaints there, so I'm just gonna keep using Mint because I've never had cheaper phone service, and Visible, excuse me, is still, I think, cheaper at unlimited data, but Me and my wife do not use that much data on our phones. For the most part, me, my family, and my friends that are using Mint are all people that have access to Wi-Fi the majority of the time and use less than 4 GB of cellular data per month. And if you're not a heavy data consumer on your phone, Mint Mobile still undercuts Visible by quite a bit. You can still get the phone bill down to $15 a month. And I don't think Visible does that. I think Visible just does unlimited data for, what was it, $25 a month? Which is pretty good, and it's on the Verizon network as well, which is pretty widespread. But yeah, it's not a bad option. It's just like I don't use enough data to justify spending more money. Um, you can see the battery health on an Apple Watch. Yeah, just like you can't do it on an iPad, but you can do it on a watch, which I don't understand. See, I kept saying like, why doesn't the iPad get battery health features? And the response was, well, Apple lost the court case about slowing down the processor to prioritize the battery life. And that was all about the iPhone. So Apple was legally required to support the battery health feature on iOS, but they weren't required to on the iPad. So that's why people are like, see, they can get away with not having it on the iPad. But nothing in the court case said they had to add it to the Apple Watch. So I don't follow that argument because you can still check it. You just go into settings, check battery, then battery health, and it's right there. Mine's still at 99%, which is pretty good considering it's a tiny battery and it's how old now? I bought this in September, I believe. So that's 8 months, 9 months coming up. Um, so 99% is pretty much normal. And yeah, battery health is a thing on Macs, correct? That's been there for a while. So I don't really follow why people think that it's okay for the iPads not to have optimized battery charging or battery health. Even AirPods have optimized battery charging, but not the iPad. Like, it's so frustrating that whenever like my iPad gets low and I plug it in, it just charges up all the way to 100% every time, and it stays at 100% until you unplug it. Whereas every other Apple device, basically, both my watch, my phone, my Mac, even my AirPods, they'll all stop at 80% and then go up to 100 when they think they're about to be used. So I don't get it. Mike says mine's 65%. Geez, 65% after what do you have, Mike? Don't you have a Series 5? That means that was 2019? 20 so 3 years at 65. Yeah, that's not great. Hey Ben, wow, that was generous of you. Thank you for the super chat. He says, you know, it would be cool using Apple Watch as an Apple TV remote. Would Apple ever make that happen? I thought that was a thing. Is it not a thing? There are third-party apps that let you use your Apple Watch as a remote for like your Roku. I tried that once. It was like, oh, there's like a Roku Apple Watch app. But it didn't work that well, and it was not easier than just using the actual remote, so I got rid of it. I wasn't too impressed with it. The problem is remotes just... Apple tried to make them simple, but everyone just loves it more and more when they have just a bit more flexibility with the buttons. You don't have to have a whole number pad. There's so many crazy cable TV providers that are convinced they need 800 buttons on the remote, but typically it's better to have 2 or 3 buttons. It's better to have more than 2 or 3 buttons. That's why people didn't like the trackpad Siri remote, but they really like the new Siri remote, which has a mute button, a D-pad, a Siri button, volume button, menu button. There's just a bit more buttons to it that made it a bit more usable and user-friendly. And trying to stuff all of those functions and buttons all onto the Apple Watch are kind of tricky. Was looking at battery percentage, not health. Series 5 is currently at 75. Okay, that's normal. I was going to say 65% is not... that doesn't sound right after 3 years of usage. I think the Series 5 is about to turn 3 or 4. So 78 sounds right, because I think typical battery health is... battery degradation is considered normal with consumer electronics like phones, iPads, and watches and stuff for 80% after 2 years. So you're past 2 years and you're starting to dip below 80%. That's pretty typical. You can control your Apple TV from your Apple Watch. I haven't figured out how to do it, but it's probably because I don't have an Apple TV, so that may be why. Do you think the new iPad Pros will get MagSafe charging as rumored? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Several people have come forward and say that, and I just I don't follow. I don't get it. Like, it does not make as much sense as MagSafe on an iPhone. An iPhone is small enough to hold in one hand, so you just drop it on a little puck and it starts charging. An iPad, for one, is almost always going to have these big folio covers and keyboard cases attached to it. So either Apple's going to have to reintroduce all brand new folio covers and brand new keyboard cases that all have MagSafe support on the back. And also, iPads don't typically sit flat on like a little charge puck like that. I don't know. It would be way harder to align. Like a much larger device like an iPad trying to get the little puck to align would be way harder, not more convenient, and require you to buy more accessories. So it's pretty ridiculous to me that, yeah, you would also have to add glass, which would make the iPad heavier, or plastic, but I don't think anyone would be in favor of that. So everyone keeps saying that, but I'm not even in favor of the MagSafe that's on the MacBooks. I know that's what everyone's follow-up is. Maybe it's the MacBook Pro kind of MagSafe. It's like, well, why are we adding a single-purpose port to the iPad? Just give it another Type-C port. It doesn't need MagSafe. Like, you want to add a port to the iPad that just literally does one thing and nothing else? I'd rather just have two USB-C ports on the iPad than a USB-C port and a MagSafe port. Almost all iPads are used in cases because iPads don't have kickstands built into them. So everyone basically has to get a cover or a keyboard case for them to prop them up and use them. So yeah, I don't follow the use case. It's not like you have a little MagSafe puck on your nightstand and then you take your iPad out of the case and try to align it with the puck. That would just be awkward. It would just be weird. And pulling the puck off would be a lot harder. I can pull my phone off of a MagSafe puck really easily because you just grab the phone and then pinch it from the back and the puck pops off. But you can't do that with an iPad. So I don't get it. Everyone's saying it's going to happen, but I'm going off on a limb here and just saying I have a feeling that maybe they tested it and quickly realized it was a bad idea, but we're still hearing about it through sources and that kind of thing. Sources are still talking about it, but I just can't see Apple doing it. I'm going to get a little bit more brave and a bit more bold with my predictions. Sometimes I'm starting to feel like Apple listens. Not necessarily to my channel, but hey, I'll just say, yeah, whatever. People, I've been told Apple employees watch my videos or something like that. But it's highly unlikely. But there's been times I've been like, okay, this is something that Apple will probably do because it makes sense and it's logical and it aligns for their business statements, and it makes logical sense from a revenue perspective to maximize profitability and that kind of thing. And then it sounds more and more real as time went on. So like everyone was basically under the assumption that Apple would never adopt USB-C a few years ago. They were like, no, Apple's not going Type-C. They're just going wireless. They want to go portless everything, and MagSafe will be the only option. And the more and more I thought about it, the less and less sense it made. And I was like, especially after you pulled the e-waste card, you can't really get away with portless at this point. There's very, very few advantages to doing it and all kinds of downsides to doing it. So I was like, eventually, I think Apple will cave and realize that Type-C is the best way to go because they would have port symmetry between their iPads, Macs, and phones, and it is the better port. It would be looked at as a selling point. I think a lot of people who wouldn't ordinarily upgrade would decide to upgrade just so they could have Type-C, and you could boast about Thunderbolt and fast data transfer speeds, especially if you're going to make 1 terabyte iPhones, or you're going to make ProRes supported iPhones that start shooting at 4K or 4K at 60 or 8K. Who knows what they got in the camera department. I'm not saying 8K is useful, but they definitely have to hype up the camera every year to make it feel like, wow, it's even better. Wow, it's even better. So maybe they'll give it 8K some year. Probably not this year, but at some point they may give it some much larger sensor so that it can record at higher bit rates and higher resolutions. And I'm like, okay, if the camera is going to be your driving upgrade factor, then a Thunderbolt port is not that crazy at all, considering how large the file sizes are going to be for those videos and pictures. So I kept saying I think eventually Apple will come around and go to USB-C, but there was no sources claiming that. There was no leakers claiming that. Everyone just said, nope, they're going to go portless. They'll go portless. Now all of the narrative has changed, and we've had both Quo and Bloomberg come forward and say Apple is testing and working on switching to Type-C, and they plan on implementing that for next year's iPhone, not this year's iPhone. And now I'm starting to feel less crazy. Like, okay, it's not just me. Apple probably reached the same decision I did and realized that there's all kinds of downsides by going portless and very few upsides. Whereas there's all these upsides of going with Type-C and abandoning Lightning. And you can convert, just like what I said in my video, which is that you can include an adapter and convert any Lightning cable into a Type-C cable. And that's what Bloomberg said, that they would develop an adapter. Can't wait to spend like $2,000 to update my phone plus AirPods Pro plus Max to USB-C. Yeah, well, luckily it won't be all at once, but yeah, it should. I'd be more comfortable not upgrading my AirPods until Type-C is a thing. If Apple made AirPods Max with USB-C, ooh, I would love it. I hope that becomes a thing. But I'm still not convinced AirPods Max will get a follow-up. I'm worried it's going to turn into the OG HomePod where they just do it once and then no one buys it, so they forget about it. Portless never made sense to me. Waiting 10 years for USB-C also never did either. Well, technically, Phil Schiller did say that they wanted to use Lightning for the next decade. I don't know if they meant that literally. Some people took that as this is going to be the port for the next 10 years. But for one, Phil Schiller is gone now, and I don't think Apple can commit to those kinds of timelines that easily. But if Phil ends up being correct, this rumor does align pretty well. Because they introduced Lightning in 2012, and they said that this would be the port for the next decade. Yeah, Phil also said AirPower was coming out, so we can't trust Phil. But that was 2012. This year is 2022. So if the iPhone 14 is the last iPhone with Lightning, that would be a full 10 years of Lightning on the iPhone. So then you could switch it to Thunderbolt or Type-C or whatever and say, this is our next 10 years. And maybe portless will be ready by 2032. Who knows? But I don't know. I was expecting wireless technology to improve a lot more by now. And I think Apple was too. They probably wanted to go portless and looked at the state of MagSafe and looked at the state of wireless, and they were like, yeah, I don't think there's going to be a lot of advantages to doing this. Portless will not be possible because of using recovery mode, iTunes backup, and iTunes music transfer. No. Oh my God, how many times do I have to go down that trend? You can do iTunes backup and music transfer wirelessly. That's a thing. It's not impossible. It's just not very practical. Apple already mass produces devices without any kind of maintenance port. Like my Apple Watch Series 7, they got rid of the maintenance port on this thing, and also the majority of Apple Watches didn't even use the maintenance port ever. So all of the firmware updates, all of the apps, all of the syncing, all of the stuff is done wirelessly. Apple TV, even though it has a power and HDMI port, there's still no maintenance port. It just, when something goes wrong with the OS, it restarts and it can pull a fresh copy of tvOS from the cloud. And there's no like hardware reset on the Apple TV. Basically, all that stuff is done wirelessly. Thunderbolt 4 on the Pros, in my opinion. It's not necessarily on the regular phones. Yeah, kind of like how the iPad Pros have Thunderbolt and the iPad Air just has USB-C, what is it? USB 3.2 or something like that. Like, it's a fast form of USB, but it's not as fast as Thunderbolt. How do you think watchOS will evolve? Do you think it has peaked? Yeah, I feel like they've quickly, like, it's not that they're missing things. It's just like, how many more things can you do? The biggest thing on my head I keep thinking of, but they haven't acted on, is third-party watch faces. I honestly think third-party watch faces would be far more profitable and logical than an app store. I've been using the Apple Watch since day one. I got the OG Apple Watch Sport way back in 2015 when it was brand new and it just came out. I had it and used it, and I've been basically wearing an Apple Watch ever since. There is like barely any third party Apple Watch apps that I use frequently. Everything I use my Apple Watch for basically just uses the native first party apps that are already on there. I use messages, I use email, I use the pinging the iPhone thing is super helpful. I do that all the time. There's not like a big list of third party apps I can recommend anybody get on their watch. Maybe Facebook Messenger, I guess. But that's about it. I use Apple Pay. Um, yeah, like all the stuff I use my watch for is already baked in, whereas third party watch faces could be a very big blossoming market because you could come up with really, really crazy and intricate watch faces with fancy animations and stuff, and you could charge for them, just like how Apple charges extra for the Hermes Apple Watch. I always called it Hermes, but the Hermes Apple Watch has these custom watch faces that you can't get on others. It's like, okay, there could be all kinds of developers that come up with their own creative custom watch faces with all kinds of complications and fancy themes and characters, and you can put video files in there, just like how you have the Disney partnership with the watch faces with Woody and Buzz and Mickey and Minnie. Imagine if any company out there, or heck, I mean, I'm not really into crypto and NFTs that much, but imagine if there were watch faces that could demonstrate or play like NFTs for people that they buy, or track their cryptocurrency and that kind of thing. I don't know. Like, there's so much potential for that, and you could do free watch faces or you could do paid watch faces. And again, Apple can analyze them just like they analyze apps that get posted on the WatchOS App Store. So if there's a watch face that does something wrong or inappropriate, they don't let that one go on the Apple Watch. But you could charge people, and Apple could take a cut. It doesn't have to be 30%, but it could be a 15% cut. And I think that market would be huge. I think there would be a ton of revenue generated just by having third-party watch faces. And it's an option, you know. If you don't want to use them, you can just use in the baked in. Taco Bell watch face. There you go. Taco Bell could make their own. McDonald's could make their own. Any number of, like, you know, car companies could make their own watch faces that are properly optimized to work with your EV, like your vehicle. You can just check and see the range of your car, or see if there's an update available or notifications about your car and that kind of thing. What system themes in iOS? Yeah, that'd be good. I had a scary thought of a made for Apple Watch program where third-party companies get to create a special edition of Apple Watch like Hermes, but the special watch faces are tied to the hardware. Well, that's kind of already a thing, isn't it? Special edition of Apple Watch, but yeah, that's basically what Apple's already accomplished with Hermes. I use a bunch of third-party apps, but the one I used the most was discontinued. Uber. That was another thing. There was a Twitter Apple Watch app at the very, very beginning. There was even an Instagram Apple Watch app, and then they went away. And there's like third-party ones. There's like Chirp or something, but you have to pay for it. I don't want to pay for it. I'm saying other company. Why does it matter if other companies do it? Why is it scary if someone outside of Hermes do it? It's, at the end of the day, it's still a third-party company that has watch faces tied to the hardware. I don't think they're particularly good watch faces, so I don't care. But I understand the logic of, we've quickly run out of new and like interesting features to implement into the Apple Watch because it's just practical, right? You cannot expect Apple to come up with a new health sensor every year. They've been making Apple Watches for 7 years now, and they're probably going to keep coming out with a new Apple Watch every year for the next 50 years. Do you think there's going to be 50 more health sensors they can bake in? No, that's ridiculous. Like, no, you can't come up with a brand new chassis, a brand new design, or a brand new health feature every single generation. That's just not possible. So you got to lean into the fashion aspect a little bit and lead into the beauty aspect a bit more. Um, so I'm thinking like, yeah, lean into the watch faces. If you want to make a newer watch or a newer design more or desirable or more interesting, then come up with watch faces that are only available on certain Apple Watches, right? Like maybe you buy this one specific color. Oh, thank you for the super chat. Option Command Media. He says the flat watch leaks are all fake. Willing to bet on it. I think you're probably right. They seemed to all be fake last year. We'll watch everyone get punked again this year when the Apple Watch gets even more curved. Um, yeah, Nike faces with Nike editions. Yeah, that's been a thing for a while. I could get them wanting to lean into it further and further because that's pretty much all you got going. But if they wanted to make like paid watch faces where it was like, okay, if you buy this special Apple Watch, you can get the watch face, or you can buy this watch face on the store for $5 or $10 or that kind of thing. You unlocked it via software. I could see that becoming really popular. So many Apple Watch apps just disappeared or the software companies dropped support. It's true. Yeah, people did not want to try very hard. Probably because the lack of activity. They probably got rid of the Instagram and Twitter Apple Watch apps because there weren't enough people using them. So it kind of proves my point that like third-party apps are not that useful on the Apple Watch, but watch faces I think could be. I think that would be a much bigger thing. Um, you could just buy a third-party band, high-end band, and slap in a stainless steel 7 and it's the exact same. I've heard that Hermes uses some kind of very fancy luxurious materials. I mean, aesthetically, yeah, you could probably buy like a third party one that looks very similar, but it's likely not going to age the same way and it's using different materials. So yeah, I'm sure there is certainly some brand reputation and logos just like, wow, it's a luxury brand and Apple wants the Apple Watch to be associated with, nice brands and luxury looks. But would you like to see Apple make smart home accessories themselves? The answer will always be yes to any, like, should Apple make blah blah blah. It's as long as it's hardware, I'm probably going to say yes. I want Apple to make light bulbs. I want them to make smart switches. I want them to make refrigerators. I want them to make washing machines. Just because I've always been very happy with my Apple hardware, and there's issues they have, of course, but for the most part, that's the ecosystem I buy into. So the more they can make, if they could make routers and modems and TVs, I still think they should make dedicated TVs. There's pretty much not any hardware I can imagine that I'm like, I don't want Apple to get into that space. It's like, no, I don't have to buy it if I don't like it, but I just want to see Apple's approach towards more things. Or may use different materials. I thought their watch also is different, not the same as stainless steel. Could be wrong. Oh, the watch itself? I think it's steel, but they engrave it a little differently on the back, but even though you never see that. Heck yeah, make an Apple spoon. Make a spoon, whatever. I wasn't knocking that Hermes isn't quality if overpriced. More so meant there isn't a physical difference of the bands fit on a Hermes watch the same way the regular 7. Yeah, all Apple Watch bands are backwards compatible, so that's not a difference. Apple makes a brain chip and gives you Apple commercials while you sleep. I suddenly feel like watching Ted Lasso. I need to subscribe to Fitness Plus. Yeah, the Apple brain chip. Just because I like Apple's approach towards things. It usually is more thought out and it's more integrated, and I appreciate the way my phone and watch and laptop all works and how they're optimized for the software that runs on them. And you notice I didn't say iPad, but I would like to see that on more and more devices if possible. Sounds like Final Cut Pro has been having problems. Is it still working good for you? For the most part, I mean, it gets the job done, but there's still things that are broken. Like on the latest version of Final Cut, the transitions don't work. I'm used to being able to drag in a transition on text or pictures, and it's not working for me right now. So I can't say it's a very stable release. Luckily, it's not bad enough to the point where like I can't export videos or like the app keeps crashing. It's not crashing on me. It's just not doing what it used to do. Let's see. If I spend over $1,000, it better be from Apple. Yeah, the resale value will be pretty good. Yeah, I would have loved it if Apple made a car. I just think they're too late on it. Want to make a medium format camera? I can understand medium format. But yeah, I've been advocating for them to make a dedicated camera for years. Imagine if they didn't have to stuff all of their lenses and hardware into a tiny hole this big on the back of a phone, and instead you let Apple loose to make a dedicated camera with a full-size sensor, big with lens attachments, gave it all of the Apple Silicon power that we have with Deep Fusion, with night mode, with the power efficiency that can record at ProRes or HEVC. If you put all of that into a dedicated camera, it would be beautiful. It would be amazing. And AirDrop, you could just AirDrop pictures and videos off of your camera to your Mac. Don't even have to use the SD card slot. Or my favorite idea is that you would put a Thunderbolt port on the camera, plug that into the MacBook, and you could record videos that would automatically show up in Final Cut. Bypass the whole import process. There's a lot of YouTubers out there or people that are recording things nearby their MacBooks. If you could just record all of the footage directly into the timeline, just start editing literally a second after you press the record button, it would save so much time and money. You wouldn't have to buy SD cards or CFast cards, and you wouldn't have to waste time on plug this in through this adapter and then import it and then drag it in and all that. Thank you for the super chat, Chris the Indy says, issue is how data is synced between watch and iPhone. How is that an issue? I'm not following. It's all done via Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Is that the problem? All I want is synced notifications between devices. I want a clear notification on my iPhone and also have it appear on my iPad. I guess that's a bummer you're not experiencing that, because that's what I have. I pretty much have the same notifications on both. Airdropping off of a camera would be insane. For videos, it would definitely take longer, but for professional photographers and stuff, it would be perfect. Pictures aren't that big. Even high-quality, nice pictures are under 100 megabytes, so you could airdrop that really quick. Imagine if you were a professional photographer and you were taking pictures and then you wanted to color correct them or fix them up. You could airdrop them to your Mac or your iPad, color correct them, do some editing on them, and then show them to your customer right then and there, instead of having to take the pictures, take out the card, plug them into the laptop, import them, throw them into Photoshop or Lightroom, and then edit them on there and then show them to the client. It would just save so much time to have an Apple camera, and I think that the Apple camera overlaps a lot with the Mac market. So the main reason I say why Apple doesn't care about AAA gaming and why they're not trying very hard to buy exclusive titles to bring games to the Mac is because there's not a lot of pro gamers on the Mac. They could blow billions of dollars on those titles. Thank you for the super chat. I'll answer it in a second. But if you could, if you had like billions of dollars invested into exclusive games that you brought to the Mac, Apple would not see a return of billions in revenue, because most Mac users are not heavy-duty gamers. I'm not saying none of you are. I know some of you like to play games, but most are not. That's why they buy Mac, is because they don't care too much about games. So they wouldn't see the return on investment, whereas I think a ton of Mac buyers are also buying cameras and lenses. So that goes hand in hand. Like, because there's so many photographers, videographers, and that kind of thing that are using Mac already, if Apple made their own version, they could build in a lot of first-party advantages and that kind of thing. Excuse me. And I think that it would sell particularly well. I think it would probably start to outsell the Sonys, the Canons, and the Nikons of the world, just because of how much overlap those markets already have. Let's see. The camera had to have been discussed internally at some point in time. No way they never thought about it. I'm sure they've thought about it, but my theory is their logic, which is I'm sure the logic you guys have already made, is that they don't need a dedicated camera because Apple's camera is the iPhone. They'll just make the iPhone camera better. And it's like, okay, I don't buy that argument as long as Apple commercials and Apple events are not shot on iPhone. All of the live streams they do, all of their keynotes, they're not shot on iPhone. So Apple themselves agrees, just like these professionals, and, you know, Apple's showing off the M1 Ultra and they're giving SD card slots to the Mac. Clearly, Apple is aware that there are Mac users out there that are absolutely using cameras way more advanced than the iPhone, or at least more professional with more control. And Apple themselves uses it for their commercials and their events. They use other companies' cameras, and Apple makes amazing cameras that have to fit on the back of a very, very tiny phone. Thank you for the super sticker, Scott. So if you just gave that camera team way more space to work with in a dedicated design with interchangeable lenses and stuff, you could far outperform the iPhone camera and still have the AirDrop and the Thunderbolt connectivity and that kind of thing. I want Apple to hire me just as an idea guy. You know, I don't have software writing experience, and I'm not even a business major or anything. But I just go to them and say, "This is a product. Here's how it should work. Here's what it should cost," and that kind of thing. Um, yeah, I'll read it. I have a theory. What if an Apple employee was tricking the leakers with Photoshop pictures? John claims he saw the real picture. Well, he's claimed a lot of things, but he's also seems to have to go back on someone. It's so accurate he has to shave his eyebrows off, right? Whole reason he did that was because he felt very confident about something and then had it not work out. I'm pretty sure, yeah, I'm thinking back now. Pretty much any time I've disagreed with John on Twitter about something, I've ended up being right in the long run. The last few times I tweeted at him, I recall him saying, Apple's working on AirPower. It's coming back, and it's going to be powered by this A11 chip. And he showed these leaked pictures. This employee sent me pictures of AirPower. And I was like, that looks a lot like a clone. I have the same AirPower clone. That's why the Apple Watch is always charging in the exact same place in all these pictures. And I don't think Apple would bring it back because it's a sore spot in their history, and MagSafe kills the need for AirPower. And he was like, no, we'll get you a video of it working. AirPower's real. It's legit. And, of course, that didn't end up happening. And then the other one was, I did a video a couple years ago called iPhone 12 is not going to have 120 hertz. It was like, at this point, Ross Young came forward and said the display drivers are not there. They wanted to figure it out, but they couldn't figure it out on time. So, no, none of the iPhone 12s were going to have 120 hertz. I dropped that video, and everyone complained to me. Thank you for the super chat, Chris. That's very nice of you. He says, hey, you. Super sticker, I guess. Thank you. Basically, right after I posted that video, he dropped the video of don't give up on 120 hertz just yet, because my source says the iPhone 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max are going to have 120 hertz. And I replied to the tweet, and I was like, no, it's too vague. Like, you're not confident enough. You're not saying it will, but you're not saying it won't. You're just saying, there's a chance it might actually have it. I was like, if you're not that confident in it, then it means it's not happening. So I replied, sorry, I give up. I know for sure it's not going to happen. There's definitely like too much vague leaks and conflicting reports about this. Ross Young is accurate, so I trusted him. And once again, that ended up being correct. There was no 120 hertz. Even though when I dropped that video, all I got were tons and tons of comments saying, Drew, but so-and-so says it's going to have 120 hertz. But Drew, someone else said it's going to have a 20. What are you talking about? Like, I think it was Everything Apple Pro and like Max Weinbach or John. They were all claiming, no, it will have 120 hertz. And everyone kept telling me I was wrong for assuming it wouldn't have it. So I'm going to keep leaning on my realistic expectations because those end up being correct. And there's just been plenty of times where a lot of these other leakers claim something is going to happen because it makes for a great thumbnail and for a great title, and then it does not happen. So, and it just sets bad expectations. That's what I really am disappointed by. It's not that like someone is lying or making stuff up. It's just that, well, you get people excited and you get people hyped up for something, so they wait and they don't buy. And then when it comes out, it's a big disappointment where I'm like, if we try to keep expectations realistic and think about, okay, what's likely and what's real, then you won't be let down and disappointed so much. But, okay, I'm caught up. However, Apple did make a significant investment into gaming on Mac. I think more gamers would use Macs. I mean, the Mac Studio is tiny, has good cooling, etc. It has a lot of good qualities. I disagree. I think most gamers are far more interested in having a computer they can work on. The gaming PC market is huge, and they like having things that they can take apart and work on and RGB and build and have interchangeable options. And Apple has statistically always just not been very good at that. I think even if Apple made a big push into gaming, there would still be a bunch of people saying, well, the PC is better because I can customize it and I can control it and I can build it the way I want. And Apple's usually not caring too much about right to repair, and they're far more interested in just making the product work, and you don't think about how the back end of it does stuff. So I thank you for the super chat. I personally just think it's a hopeless cause. Apple makes plenty of money from gaming already through the iOS App Store, and they would make a fraction more if they spent billions on trying to bring games to the Mac. But like I've always said, it's not a hardware or software issue. It's all a game dev issue. Game devs don't want to optimize their games for the Mac, even though Macs have perfectly good GPUs and they could run games really, really well if they were optimized for the Metal graphics engine, but they aren't because there's not enough gamers to justify it. And Apple could try to just pay off a bunch of devs to optimize things for the Mac, but they wouldn't get their money out of it. I am a gamer, and as a gamer, I love to upgrade my PC parts. Exactly. They all are far more into not just the software. It's not like the gaming PC market is really passionate just because they have a lot of games on Windows and they just really, really like Windows. It's also the hardware around that community, like the RTX fans and the overclocking people and the people that do liquid cooled PCs, and that's all so separate from Apple. I think Apple can just accept that it's okay if Macs aren't great at everything, because it feels like that's the one thing they're not good at, so everyone's convinced they have to get better at that, and I'm not. I'm just like, they'll be fine if they just don't win every argument. A Mac doesn't have to be better at everything. If it's better than Windows at everything except gaming, that's still a successful product in my book. Let's see. Another super chat says everything after AirPods Max is being BS for John. I don't think that's entirely true. I think he's gotten a lot right with Android leaks. I haven't seen so much accuracy with his Apple leaks, but a lot of his Pixel stuff and Samsung leaks and stuff have been a bit more reputable. But I don't follow that stuff too closely, so I don't know. Gustavo says, I switched off 120 hertz on my 13 Pro Max. It doesn't heat up when playing games anymore. The battery lasts a bit longer. Well, that's good. If you're fine with 60 hertz, then yeah, turn it off. I've told that to many people. If you don't know the difference, then leave that off. You'll get much better battery life. Linus Tech Tips made a video agreeing with you that people who would be interested in gaming on a Mac are a fraction of a percent of the Mac OS percent of gamers. Yeah, it's not worth it. It's not a hardware problem, which is the frustrating part, because there's so many people. That's funny because Linus and I make very different kinds of videos, and Linus and I are interested in very different kinds of technology, and yet we agree on something. If Drew and Linus are agreeing on something, you know that it must be true, right? Which is that there's nothing really Apple can do to make Macs better at gaming. At least at the hardware and software level. They've already provided the tools for developers to make games that are well optimized for the Mac, and they've created GPUs that are very, very capable of running games at high frame rates and with a lot of complexity. It's all just up to the game devs themselves optimizing, and the only way Apple could really force that is if they gave the game devs a bunch of money. And the reason the game devs don't do it is because they're not getting much money out of that kind of investment. Minecraft is fun on Mac. It's still not optimized for Apple Silicon, though. Or at least not very well. I sold my AirPower because John said a new one was coming. Oh my god. I sold my AirPower prematurely. Games on the Mac App Store runs really well on basic M1 chips. Yeah. No, they're great. Like if you actually put in the time and energy to optimize a game for Metal and get it to run on Apple Silicon, it's fantastic. I only want more battery life for the next Apple Watch. The design is good enough. That's the depressing thing, is that the battery life on the Apple Watch has literally been the same from day one all the way till now. There was rumors about watchOS 9 gaining this super hyper efficient mode where it would turn off a bunch of features and prioritize battery life. I hope that ends up becoming a thing because I think it would be very, very useful and a lot of people would end up using it. Um, Freaking game devs and money. Well, like, you have to ask yourself, why does Apple have to pay game devs to optimize for the Mac? Like, if Apple found themselves in that situation, it's likely because, well, why don't the game devs just optimize their games for the Mac without getting paid by Apple? Because, Windows doesn't pay game devs to optimize games for Windows. It's because there's incentive. There's a market of PC gamers on Windows, so they're willing to um, write the software because they know they'll get more sales and it'll be worth it to them. And they know they're not going to get sales if they optimize it for the Mac. So it's a tough situation for I feel bad for the people that are really into gaming and also really into Mac. It's not a huge segment of the market, but it is a segment I see, and I just wish that those people could feel more listened to and more heard, but the numbers aren't on their side, unfortunately. Maybe a squared off body would result in a larger battery because possibly bigger and more usable volume. Possible, but you can't have it look good and also have a bigger battery. If you make it squared off and you leave the thickness the same, it will look like this. This is the render of what it looks like when you leave the thickness of the Apple Watch the same, but you make it squared off. It's not a good look. It's very chunk, it's very bricky, and it's probably not even very comfortable on the wrist. It's very bulky. So all of the good-looking renders, all of the renders of the Apple Watch squared off that make it look clean and nice, have to make it thinner, because that's the only way, I guess, to make it aesthetically pleasing is to shave off the 2.5D glass, get the chassis a bit narrower, but that does not allow for bigger battery life because now you have less physical space to work with. Didn't squaring off the MacBooks give them more space internally? The same could happen with watches. Yeah, but they got thicker. That's the bigger problem. I'm not saying it's impossible to make it squared off and have a bigger battery. I'm just saying it won't look nice. Which aesthetics with a watch are a bit more important than with a laptop because it's, a MacBook Pro is for work. But I'm saying that's the end outcome. Like, okay, bigger battery life, but Energizer phone levels of thick, Apple Watch chunk, which is why I'm under the belief that the flat glass design is for the rugged, durable watch. I think they're going to intentionally make a version of the Apple Watch that's more durable and meant for the outdoors and meant to get banged up. And maybe it'll have better battery life and it'll be able to take a beating, but the cost will come with the aesthetics. It won't look very pretty. It won't look as nice as the Series 7 and Series 8 does. We were okay with the MacBook looking just as thick without that tapered look of yesterday. Well, yeah, because you don't wear a MacBook. It goes into a bag and then you pull it out and open it up and it sits on your lap. Let's see. Is that an 11-inch iPad? No, it's a 12.9-inch iPad. Why doesn't the Mac game discussion so many times that it's become tiring? I'm sorry. I know. I'm sick of that subject as well. Need a real low power mode that runs the GPS like every other sport watch from Garmin? That would be nice. Yeah, I hope they do something like that. But, Apple Watch is already outselling Garmin. It's outselling every watch. And Apple's going to just continue to push Apple Watch competition into the ground. Like, it's kind of rude. It could look as nice, Drew. Let us believe without judgment. I'm saying the battery's got to go somewhere. Either the watch is chonk and thick, or it's thin and the battery's smaller. You can't have both. What do you think of the rumored Apple AR glasses? Will it ever become a thing, or is it just wishful thinking? I do think it'll eventually become a thing. It's just taking a very, very long time to get right because it's a very, very challenging piece of engineering to get like something lightweight that can display content with a high frame rate and a high resolution, and you're able to comfortably wear it on your face. And it's possible that the tech is just very far out because you have to power a really, really capable piece of hardware off of a tiny battery, and Apple Silicon's just not that efficient yet. It's probably the most efficient silicon in the world, and yet it's still not enough to make a pair of AR glasses work. So I'm sure they're working on it. They've been working on it for years, and it's just taking a long, long time to get it right. Today they were talking about the mixed reality headset being demoed to the board, which is making it sound more real. Like they have some kind of headset that's not glasses that they're ready to demo, but it still just doesn't sound like anything Apple would release. I don't know. It sounds more like a VR headset than an AR headset, and Apple doesn't has not shown much interest in VR and that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I'm not too convinced that that's going to formulate into anything. My theory for a long time has been that the VR headset Apple's working on is just for internal use. Like they're building a lot for developers and for software engineers, but they're not planning on selling it. And it's more of a dev tool that they're working on to write software and to come up with use cases for the glasses. Because the glasses I could see being an everyday consumer type thing. Like anybody could wear those. You could wear them in public. You could take them with you on the go. VR headset is like a living room toy. It can't really go outside of a room because you're basically blindfolded and you're going to look stupid if you try to wear it in public. So that severely limits the use cases of it. And they've offered VR stuff in the past and then not supported it and just kind of discontinued it. So yeah, I don't know. I just don't see a mixed reality headset going anywhere with them. The glasses, of course, that would be like the next big thing. That would be the last major category Tim Cook oversees. But based on how AR glasses are looking in other companies, Google showcased some new Google Glass thing, and Snapchat had a version of Spectacles with some AR functionality and stuff. And none of them seem ready. And I know that Apple may be able to surpass other companies' hardware in terms of efficiency and stuff, but not by too much. Apple still has to buy from the same suppliers as everybody else. Um, Maybe this could work with some kind of Xiaomi-esque long-distance wireless charging battery that you have in your pocket or bag. Well, that's just as much as AR glasses is another piece of technology that always sounds like it's ready or sounds like it's around the corner, but it never is. They've been talking about doing charging across the air for years, and it's never turned into anything that a consumer can do. It's not ready like the Apple Car. I'm not convinced the Apple Car is ever going to be ready. I think it would have been ready about 7 years ago, but that's when it should have entered the market, but Apple was too hesitant and too nervous, so they didn't do it. How the glasses would be navigated, it doesn't seem like their navigation would be very good. I don't think it's the kind of device that you would interact with that very much. It's more of a device that would just display things. Um, but it's basically, there's essentially like an infinite number of things you could display. You could put a TV on any wall. You could add things to devices you're already using. So like you could, just like you have picture in picture on your phone, you can have the video playing right next to your phone. You could get a notification on your phone from across the room and the text message pops up from above the phone. You could be on the road driving and have the road or route you need to take highlight and have arrows that say, turn here, go here, that kind of thing. There's endless possibilities of what you could do with AR glasses, but the hardware is just so fundamentally limited right now. Um, I want an Apple car I can drive. Yeah, that's the bigger problem. Is it sounds like Apple wants to make a car that you can't drive, but they're I'm sorry, there's no way Apple is got a better self-driving system than Tesla. Tesla just has way more data on this than Apple does, and we know Apple's testing self-driving cars. That's kind of like an open secret because of all the permits and legalities they've had to go through to continue testing their vehicles. And I even saw one not far from my hometown where there was a Apple car driving around where, I mean, it wasn't an Apple-made car, but it had like driving stuff on it, like LiDAR and sensors and stuff scanning its environment for self-driving. Michael, thank you for your support. He says, just joined. Hope you're having a good day. I'm not feeling very good. I feel kind of like crap today. And because of all this I'm in like a local theater production, and all the rehearsals are going on right now. And they're like, it's way more time consuming than I expected it to be. So I'm not getting very good sleep and that kind of thing. But it's almost over. I should be done with it, and we should go back to a normal week next week. But this is good. I'm glad to be talking with you guys again. It makes me feel like there's a sense of normalcy, and it's just not been a normal week for me at all. So I appreciate you asking, but I think I'll have a much better day when this whole production is done next week. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, I can't wait for AR to make that leap. Imagine how-to and other tutorials for literally anything. Super freaking dope. That's true. How-to tutorials and stuff would be way, way easier if you could just wear the glasses and then it walks you through exactly what to do with your hands, and your hands are free. Yeah, I don't expect much interaction. I don't expect there to be buttons. I don't think you're going to be touching and navigating stuff like this all the time. I think it's mostly going to be about displaying things, and that's going to open up a whole new realm of possibilities. Playing in a theater. Yeah, like a local theater thing. If Apple Car would go anything like Apple Maps, I'd rather it didn't self-drive. Yeah. Well, I can see what Apple's trying to do, because Apple's mindset whenever they enter a market is always kind of like, we want to figure out where things are going and jump to that. We don't want to start with the early prototype stage. We want to just cut right to the chase and get right to the interesting stuff. That's why Steve Jobs' big moment with like the iPhone was like, we're going all in on multi-touch, and that was not really as common or as popular as a thing when the iPhone came out, but they kind of bypassed and kind of gave everyone a taste of the future and figured out, here's where technology is going, so let's implement that now and adopt that now. And I have a feeling that it's that same kind of ahead of the curb, literally ahead of the curb, mindset that's what Apple's trying to do with the car, where it's like, okay, we could build an EV because that's what a lot of companies are doing right now, but we think a lot of companies are trying to come up with autonomous vehicles and robo-taxis. So maybe Apple's trying to like cut the chase and get straight to the robo-taxi part, because they believe that's going to be the future, where cars aren't really owned by people. You're just going to ride around in a robo-taxi made by either Google or Tesla or Apple now. And Apple will come up with a vehicle and you just get to ride in it. You don't actually get to buy one for yourself. But I think what they'll discover is that creating a robo-taxi or self-driving vehicles is way more complex than they thought. And it's not going to be very achievable just by doing your own internal prototype testing. And it's going to require a lot of data and a lot of miles driven autonomously to and figure out exactly how to make that work. So I think it would have been a better idea for Apple to just go straight in with, EVs that you actually can drive yourself. But they've kind of missed it. It would have been better to start a long time ago. The fact that they haven't even announced one at this point puts them at a severe, severe disadvantage of basically every other EV company on the road. Maybe they'll buy out a startup. Maybe they'll buy out Lucid or Canoe or something. That would be a quick way to jump into the market. I really would rather own my own car. This way I can go anywhere I want. No, I agree. I'm the same way. I don't want to take robo-taxis everywhere. I want to own my own car too. But I can understand from a business perspective, it's far more profitable to not sell your car if you do figure out how to make a robo-taxi. If you could develop a car that can drive itself, you will make infinitely more money by just renting it out as a taxi than you would selling it to consumers. So from a business perspective, I get it. From a consumer perspective, yeah, I would much rather just buy my own car. I want to have control over where I go. As much as I love driving, and I do mean love it, it would be nice to have your own chauffeur to and from my 12-hour shift. Use that time to nap if it didn't sleep well or doom scroll. Yeah, there's all kinds of advantages. There's things I would love about it too, but I just don't think it's as soon as people make it out to be. The new detailed Apple Maps is evidence that they are working on a self-driving system similar to Waymo. Still think Teslas will be the best. Yeah, I think I agree with Jacob. I've been watching a lot of FSD beta videos and a lot of cruise and Waymo services are like they only work at night. Like I think the cruise autonomous driving thing only works from like 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. and then they have to have a person at the wheel. This boat really needs some bailing out of the major water leak. Yeah, I heard Gurman from Bloomberg say that Apple would be interested in the engineering talent behind Canoe, but not any of the actual IP, which bummed me out because I think the Canoe vehicles are really cool. But Apple should buy Polestar. I think Polestar is already owned by, isn't it owned by Volvo or something? I like the concept of a robo-taxi. Imagine not having to look for parking lots. Yeah. Or I think you just mean parking in general. Yeah. Just drop you off at the front and then the car goes off. When you're ready to go, another one comes pick you up. In theory, it's a very compelling idea. It's just not as easy as companies make it out to be. What do you think about the potential of renting your iPhone? I think it is a bad idea because people buy iPhones for long term use and for handing down to relatives. I think for Apple, it's a great idea. I think for consumers, it's a terrible idea. So I know absolutely why it makes sense for them to go into hardware subscriptions because, um, for one, you'll never own the device, which means that the longer you own it, the more you've paid for it. And the other thing I know is that people don't really like upgrading phones. They want to just keep using the phone they have, and they want it to just keep working the way it is. And I know that year over year, it's getting more and more challenging for Apple to come up with meaningful upgrades. It's very, very little differences between iPhones year over year, and the better they get and the more advanced iPhones get, the more they all start to blur together and they all start to act the same. And there's very, very few differences between the two. So if you get people into a subscription model instead of, hey, you should buy this latest iPhone and trade in your old one, and then this one's going to cost $600 or $800 or $1,000 for you to upgrade your phone, that's a much harder business pitch than just telling someone, hey, you can have the latest iPhone for this much a month, and you just pay a monthly fee. You don't even think about it. The monthly fee seems like a low price because compared to $600 or $1,000 of a one-time purchase, now you just look at the phone and think, oh, well, I get the latest hardware for $30 a month. Okay, that's basically $1 a day for me to have the coolest and latest and greatest tech from Apple. So long term, as you rent that phone over the course of 3, 4, 5 years, Apple will make so much more money off of you, but the everyday consumer isn't going to think about that. They're not thinking about the grand total cost. They're just thinking of I get the latest iPhone, or I just keep using my phone the way I do. But you'll never get to a point where it's paid off if they rent it out, which means that because people don't necessarily like upgrading their phone, they don't want to deal with switching from an iCloud backup or switching the SIM over and stuff. They just keep using the same phone for 4 or 5 years, and they end up paying Apple $1,600, $1,800 over the course of that amount of time. So from a financial perspective, it's very, very logical. And considering how small the upgrades are getting year over year, I completely understand why Apple wants to do that. I would probably have suggested the same thing. If I was working at Apple, I would say, hey, let's pivot more towards trying to get our bread and butter, which is the iPhone. That brings in more money than anything for them. Let's find more ways of turning the iPhone into a recurring subscription, less so a big one-time purchase, because these iPhone upgrades year over year are getting smaller and smaller. So turning it into a monthly thing makes sense, but I would not recommend anybody do it, of course. I would much rather buy my phone outright, and I would encourage others to buy their phones outright, preferably if you're not me, like reviewing the latest and greatest tech. So like when the new iPhone comes out, of course, I want to unbox it and talk about it as soon as it's available, but I'm a tech channel. I'm reviewing this stuff for my work. Whereas if you're not reviewing your phone or whatever for your work, you should probably just wait a few more months, wait for it to go on sale, wait for certified refurbished, or like some people do, always buy last year's model. If you always buy last year's model, you'll spend half as much money and still get a pretty nice, pretty new generation iPhone. You can buy them renewed on Amazon. You can get iPhone XRs for dirt cheap these days, and just use that as long as you can. And when that's done, buy a renewed iPhone 12 or iPhone 13, which you'll be able to find for dirt cheap. That's what I would encourage people to do to save money. If you just don't care about money and you just want to have the latest and greatest from day one, then yeah, the iPhone hardware subscription would be a much better deal. If it was $30 per month, that's a better deal than getting a new one every year. Well, that's just a template example. But the point is, with $30 a month, uh, you'll never own the phone. So when you're done paying for the phone, so what would that be? $30 a month, 12 months a year. That's $400 or so. You give the phone back. Apple can then sell that phone again, certified refurbished, or rent it out at a discounted price. Whereas if you don't get the new iPhone every year and you're just paying $30 a month, there might be contracts and stuff. Maybe it's more likely that they would do like $30 a month when you agree to 2 years. So that ends up being like 24 months. So $720 for the phone. But then even if you don't upgrade after those 2 years, you have to keep paying $30 a month. So that could very quickly turn into $1,000 or $1,200. I don't know what prices they have in mind, but I get the feeling that knowing that no matter how much you pay, you will never own the phone. They know that regardless, you will eventually have to give that phone back to them, and then they can turn around and sell it again. Um, they will try to incentivize people to go with the monthly subscription by including Apple One stuff. If you rent the iPhone, you get Apple Music for free, or if you rent the iPhone, you get Apple One individual for free, or you get Apple One Premiere for only an extra $10 a month. So before you know it, you can only pay $50 a month to have this iPhone and all of these Apple One features and that kind of stuff. Um, I understand why they want to go in that direction, even though I wouldn't do it myself. I hate subscriptions. I hate paying monthly for things, so I would very much rather just have a one-time upfront cost. Is the literal only difference that you don't need to pass a credit check to do the subscription? I know we don't have details yet. You might still need to do something because they're still renting you the equipment. You know, they probably will still do a credit check because, like, T-Mobile had to do a credit check on me because they didn't want me to buy the T-Mobile gateway itself. They were like, we'll include the gateway, but you don't own the gateway. So if you cancel the service, you have to return it. So they did run a credit check on me for that. But because Apple would be giving you like a $1,000 or $1,200 iPhone and you're technically only paying $30 in the first month, they'd probably run a credit check and be like, okay, if you have a history of not paying bills that you've agreed to pay, then we won't let you do it. But it's kind of like the upgrade program. The difference is on the upgrade program, you can eventually own the phone. It's very similar, I agree. But with the upgrade program, once you've been paying for it for 2 years, you can just keep it and you're done with it. Whereas with the hardware subscription, you would never own it, no matter what. I think you made a really good point with the previous video on your desire to cut back monthly costs. It's kind of addicting, frankly. Like, just, it's not that like we need to save $1 a month or $3 a month, but it's like, well, if I'm not using this or I don't need to use it, why would I pay for it? Am I going to continue to pay Apple just because I can't be bothered with sorting pictures and videos and that takes too much time? I don't know. If they require credit check for the subscription, then it makes no financial sense unless the person signing up gets a new iPhone every year under iPhone upgrade program and it's cheaper. I don't. It does make financial sense because if that person if that person rents that phone for 3 or 4 years, they're going to end up paying a heck of a lot more for it than someone who pays outright. Like, if I bought the iPhone 14 Pro Max, that's going to be $1,200. Whereas if you rent it for $40 a month for 3 years, you've paid probably close to as much as I've paid. And you have to turn your phone back into Apple by the end. So they're going to have a certified refurbished that they can turn around and resell. But yeah, I agree. It's satisfying not to be trapped in by a monthly bill. And you know that, okay, I have what I have, and there's not like getting rid of things that have infinite cost is addicting to me because you can't get rid of everything. Like my water bill, for instance. That's what comes to mind because that's now our smallest bill. We got rid of, the Netflix, we got rid of Amazon Prime, we got rid of iCloud now, Apple Music. We got rid of all of these little monthly subscriptions to the point where our cheapest recurring bill is the water bill. You kind of need water. Yeah, maybe we could try cutting that off. No. But that's something that's like, okay, this has infinite cost. I'm going to have to pay for this for the rest of my life, but I need water, so sorry. Gotta live with it. Memes aside, yes, I'll have to keep paying for water. Um, but iCloud was also an infinite expense. The more time that goes on, the more it costs to continue storing my pictures and videos on this cloud. And it would be very, very nice if it didn't have an infinite cost, but I could still store all my pictures and videos and that kind of thing. Um, so if it's possible for you to cut out an infinite subscription, then to your gain, you can take that money, invest it, and watch it grow, and you'll find out you'll actually save a lot of money over the course of 10 years because of how much that turns into. Do you think it's worth going from the iPhone 11 to the 14 Pro Max, or should I rather wait for the 15 with the redesign? I don't know who told you the 15 would be a redesign. Um, Personally, I don't love the 14 Pro Max design. I'm not in love with the eye hole, and I think the camera on the 13 Pro Max is great. So if I were you, I would probably wait for the 14 Pro Max to come out, and if it has some features that you really love and could see yourself using, then get that. And if none of it sounds very interesting or it sounds like the camera would be that useful, then look for a certified refurbished 13 Pro Max because you'll get the 120 hertz, you'll get the big display, and you'll probably save yourself like $300 or $400 or more. Rainwater plus tank plus filter equals paid for water. Rainwater would not be a sustainable thing where I live. It rains like 5 days a year here. Water wells are infamously unreliable. You also have to get them maintained. I have friends that get their water from a well and they need to be cleaned every so often to the point where I'm not necessarily sure it would be cheaper. Our water bill is like the same price every month. It's like $20 a month. There doesn't seem to be any kind of meter on our water access. So every month we pay $20 and we use as much water as we want. But you still have to like maintain the well water stuff. So it's not necessarily free from recurring expenses. What do you listen to music on now? So my brother-in-law has Spotify Family and he added me to it. And I was like, hey, do you want me to reimburse you for this? And he was like, no, you can just have it. I don't know why they got the family plan, but I guess he got it and was comfortable with me using it. But even if he got rid of it and was like, sorry, I'm not going to give you Spotify Premium for free anymore. We do have YouTube Premium, which includes YouTube Music. So I would just use that. It's not better than Apple Music. The UI is pretty clunky. I'm fully in agreement that Apple Music has the best user interface. Spotify has a very good algorithm. But I don't spend enough time searching for music or even listening to music to justify spending $8 a month or $10 a month or whatever for Apple Music, because at the end of the day, how YouTube Music works is pretty much the same as Apple Music works, which is that my phone connects to the car or connects to my headphones. I open an app and I search for a song and I play the song. As long as I'm able to do that, I don't really care if the service costs nothing or costs $10 a month. It's like at the end of the day, I pull out my phone, I search a song, and I hit play. I like the Apple Music user interface, and I think that looks a lot better than all the other streaming apps I've used, but I'm not going to pay $10 a month just because the UI is nice. That's not worth it to me. Only costs the electricity to pump it. Oh, that's true. I haven't compared it to that. Well, I'm not saying all wells have maintenance, but I'm just saying the people I know who have wells have to pay to maintain them. But once in 10 years is still maintenance. How many people have / want an Apple Watch versus people who don't have / want one? I feel like I guess I could do that. We got to wrap up the stream here shortly. Chris has been following you since the attic. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you, Chris, although it's a very bizarre statement for someone to walk in on. Someone just walked into the stream for the first time and they were like, I've been following you since the attic. Apple has now got pressure because the iPads have sold less well. I've heard that it was mostly because of the chip shortage. It wasn't so much for demand being lower. But okay, let's find this poll. How many people? I don't know what to say. Do you have an Apple Watch and want one, or do you have one and still not want one? That's a tricky debate. I wonder how much electricity wells use. I wonder how that would compare to my city water. I don't know. That'd be an interesting debate. Let's see. How many have and want? Have or want? I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. Have or want an Apple Watch? We'll get a quick response from the chat here. Want one, but don't have one. Want, and then we'll say, don't want one, don't have one. This will be a weird poll. Yeah, I still like Mint. No complaints. They're still working good for me. Our electricity for well is $10 every 3 months. $10 every 3 months. That's pretty good. That's lower. What's the upfront cost to drill a well, though? Like, how long would it be before I break even and I start saving money? How deep equals more electricity? That's true. That makes sense. Want one and don't want one, don't have, want one and have one. I'll just say have one. I think that's, oh no, you got to make this clear. Put Apple Sheep will buy regardless as an option. The Apple Water Well. Apple needs to stop shipping USB-A cables with Siri remotes. Drives me nuts having dozens of them replacing these fragile things. Oh, Lightning USB-A cables. I thought, yeah, let's just get rid of Lightning. Can we just switch everything to Type-C now? Why do we got to wait till next year? Want one, have one. And then lastly will be have one, but don't want one. That's a weird poll. Hopefully you guys know how to answer that. That's going to be kind of random. Excuse me. Okay, you want one. The three options are you want one, but you don't have one. So you're interested in getting an Apple Watch, but you don't currently have one. The second option is you don't want an Apple Watch and you don't have an Apple Watch because you just aren't interested in watches. Third option is you have an Apple Watch and you like your Apple Watch and you want to continue to have an Apple Watch. Lastly is you have an Apple Watch, but you don't really want it. You could get rid of it. You don't really care about it. You could probably not even put it on some days. You just like, yeah, I got one, but it's not that useful, so I just don't use it too much. Should be interesting results. Wells and power generation are a pretty neat concept. Need to route the water back up the hill somehow. Correct. I guess you could try to do well water that's powered by solar and try to mix all that together. Yeah. What's interesting to me is our water bill is less than our sewer bill. So it costs more money to take my crap than it does to feed me crap, you know? The third option is your Apple Sheep option. I kind of want one, but I'm not sure if the functionality justifies the cost. I guess if you're not sure, I would just say that you don't want one. That would be the second option. What do you think of Gurman's article today about the mixed reality headset being announced at the end of this year and already shown to the board? I still have a hard time visualizing Apple pitching it. It just doesn't go along with really anything else they've unveiled, and they haven't shown much interest in VR. And pretty much all you can do with VR is gaming. And if it covers your whole face, it's not going to be something you can wear in public, and it's not going to be as accessible or as common a wearable as the Apple Watch. My idea is the board is going to see it and go, nah, And I predict we will not see one. I predict that is an internal tool, and mostly employees that are working on software will use it. Not they'll not actually sell it. Um, so stupid, but unfortunately, I find iPads much cooler than MacBooks. It's an interesting description. I guess I could also say they're cooler, but MacBooks are just more practical. From like a design perspective and an aesthetics perspective, yeah, I could agree. iPads look cooler, and it's more fancy to just have this big tablet with a big touch screen and all the cameras and Face ID, and it's so thin and light. It's like, yeah, they're the hardware is cool. They're just not as functional. It's to me like saying that, a sports car is cooler than a pickup truck. Is like, yeah, I mean, sure, I would agree. The Tesla Roadster looks a lot cooler and is probably a lot more fun to drive than an F-150 Lightning or a Cybertruck, but uh, the trucks are just they can do a lot more. They're more capable. Um, Tesla well, solar plus Powerwall plus Tesla Purity. There you go. Treating wastewater is more complex than supplying water, though a lot of fresh water is treated wastewater, but still you can't just dump wastewater somewhere. I get it, it's true, but like fresh, clean drinking water is also not found like naturally. You have to get that water from non-safe to drink water, and then you have to treat it. Um, so yeah, it makes sense, but it's still interesting to me. My day one Series 4 is now on 82% and lasts about 24 hours with sleep tracking, so I'm letting the year over year upgrade stack. Well, cool. Good idea. I'm surprised you're at 82% because the Series 4 came out in. Yeah, you got it day one. That's almost 4 years old now. I catch myself again and again that I only want the iPad Pro 2022 because it might look cool and hopefully has some features that make it possible to work like a laptop. That's all dependent on iPad OS. It's never been a hardware thing. It's never been like, oh, now they gave it the M2 chip so it can be a laptop. It's like it's all dependent on iPad OS, unfortunately. Um, I have a Plaid S, but almost certainly going to trade in for a Cybertruck when it comes out. Good call. I would do the exact same thing in your position. Um, the Plaid is awesome. Yeah, this is an EV channel. We got to move to EV now, huh? Anyway, fresh water is found naturally. Filtered water is much more rare on Earth naturally. Yeah, there is fresh water, but I don't think they just pump fresh water into your house, right? That's got to be treated. They don't just like put a hole at the bottom of the lake and then that goes straight to your kitchen sink. That would be bad. Be a lot of dirt and murky stuff, and even though it's technically fresh water, it's not necessarily like, oh yeah, drink as much of that as you want. My Series 3 still has 95% battery health. I have no idea why. Also, I upgraded to a Series 7 a couple months ago, but the Series 3 still works. How are you at 95%? Maybe you didn't use it that much. Did it stay in a drawer a lot of the time? I don't know. Can't wait for the 14 Pro Max. What upgrades do you think it's getting? I can wait. I'm not that excited for it. It'll get the eye hole, which is to me a side grade. It's not like objectively better than the 13 Pro Max notch approach. But the side bezels will be a little bit thinner, just a tiny bit thinner around the edge. And the camera bump will be even larger and thicker. And the chassis will even be thicker. So it'll be the heaviest iPhone ever. Giant camera bump with higher megapixel camera. Used it every day and charged it at night. Weird. That's bizarre. Interesting. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I think the camera will be higher resolution. Not that the 13 camera is bad, but by any means, but um, yeah, fresh is different from treated, which is different from filtered, of course. I work at a school and I hope that one day every child from the fifth grade will only work with iPads, but in Germany the internet is so bad. The WLAN 2 digitization is bad here. Yikes. That's too bad. Okay, pick your favorite option 1. Super thin Apple Watch, half thickness of Series 7. Option 2, flat-edged watch. Option 3, round Apple Watch. I prefer this, honestly. After using the Series 7, I would not buy a squared-off Apple Watch. Even if the rumors end up being true, which I don't think they are. They're probably either trolls in the leak community once again, or it's going to be the rugged, durable Apple Watch that will be intentionally less pretty. I would rather have this. I very much plan on continuing to use my Series 7 for several years to come. Are the non-Pro iPhone 14 supposed to get 120 hertz? I don't think so. There was talk that they might earlier, but that's since changed and production has started now. So I don't think the non-14s will get 120 or 90. Just before you ask, no, there'll be 60 hertz on the regular. Let's see. Got my Starlink earlier this week, by the way. Hey, congrats, Steve. I hope it continues to work well for you. That's awesome. Octagon watch. Yeah, octagons are the bestagons. I use a third-party charger, but if anything, I would assume that would be worse for the battery. Yeah, I wouldn't assume that would help your battery health. I don't think the Series 3 could be fast-charged anyway. It pretty much just had one charge speed, so... That's fascinating that your battery health is that good after this long. But what about calling it iPhone Series 14? It's more syllables. We don't need more syllables. Just keep it simple for now. In a few years, they'll probably give up on iPhones 17 and 18 and 19. But for now, let's just keep with the numbers. That seems to be simple enough, easy to recognize and refer to. But I got to get going here, guys. I got some more work to do. But I apologize if content's a little bit slower this week. It's just so much stuff going on behind the scenes. And again, I'm not feeling well. But I appreciate being able to come back to some normalcy and you guys ask good questions and have fun topics to dive into. So I'm very grateful for you all for just watching and super chatting. It seriously helps out a ton and allows me to do my dream job, which hopefully I can come back to full time with next week. Anyway, appreciate you all. Hope you have an excellent rest of your week. Take care. Bye-bye.